Hey there guys, welcome back to the Inner Circle, where this week I'm showing you how to paint this guy, the Technomancer from issue 18 of Imperium, and you will notice that he is not the same Technomancer. I have decided to kit bash mine with some Skorpekh legs and using the Technomancer top body and then getting rid of the large scarab. If you want to see how I did this, I'll post a link to a card up in the corner there, so you can see how I did the kit bash, and obviously this video is on how I painted it. So without further ado, let's take a look. So to start with, I've gone ahead and primed the model with a silver spray paint and then given it an all over wash with non-oil to darken up the recesses and dull down that metal just a little bit. It's just a generic silver spray paint that I use as usual, so it comes out a little bit brighter or shinier than lead belcher does. If you're doing lead belcher, then you can get away with just putting non-oil into the recesses and you don't have to worry about going all over the model if you don't want to. Anyway, once the non-oil has dried, I'm now applying a contrast type wash, which is a 1 part Screaming Bell to 6 parts contrast medium, and then just a little bit of water to thin it slightly. And I'm using this as a kind of glaze and applying it as usual about 2/3 of the way up each limb or area that is going to have this. Typically it's any kind of sort of standard armor. With Necrons, I break the model down into 3 layers. You have your skeleton, which are the bits that I leave silver, such as the spine and the areas in the legs. Then you have the armor, such as what I'm painting right now on the thigh, and then like the arms, the hands and things like that. And then you'll get over armor, which is typically on lords and stuff. You'll get like thigh plates and things like that, but generally most Necrons will just have the bone structure and the armor. So all of the armor pieces will get this, as I said, about 2/3 of the way up and bringing it down towards the bottom of each piece. The rib cage I count as over armor or armor, so that it has the same thing. It will have this applied to it, as well as the forearms and arms. For this custom kit bashed model, I've decided to leave the feet of the Skorpekh legs, so the sort of them long bits that make out like the claw type pieces, and I'll be doing them the same as I do his shoulder pieces and his back piece, so I'll be leaving those. And also, just to have these 2 pieces here stand out from the gold tassel bit, sort of loincloth or whatever you want to call it, I'm doing them with this as well. For the staff, I will do the whole of the handle that he is holding, as well as the piece with the Ankh symbol on it, and also his, not his spine, but the piece that made up the spine from the other part of the model. So on the back here you can see it, the spine piece in the center there. I'll apply this to the middle of that as well. Next up, I'm using INCUBI Darkness to do the shoulder pads or shoulder guards, his feet, or his, you know, the end of his limbs. They're not exactly feet, are they? The top part of his face. So if you imagine that he's got this large long beard, I'm just doing the face portion, and the beard I will do a separate color. And also the outside of his shell, whatever that piece on the back of him, his armor shell, I'll do this on the outside of it as well, leaving the inside silver, mainly because I couldn't get to it. I should not have glued it on, but I was that eager to make sure that all the pieces fit together when I was kit bashing this, that I glued it to make sure that it stayed in the right place, and obviously I now can't reach the back, so that's the main reason. But you know, it's the inside, it can stay silver. In terms of the staff, the only area, I don't think, no, none of the staff actually have the INCUBI darkness on it. It's the Ankh in the middle of his chest, so his chest emblem in the center of his rib cage, that will have this as well. And all of this will be the undercoat for the chameleon shade that I'll put over the top later on. So moving on to the next colour now, I'm using RETRIBUTOR armour to paint in all of the gold areas. So that's this loincloth type piece, his beard, the four tassel pieces, I suppose you could call them, on his back, and also on his shoulders he's got these two sort of round circular symbols. I paint them gold as well, and also on his back plate, his shell, we'll call it, his turtle shell, he's got the smaller circular discs, not the two that are orbs, but the smaller ones. I paint them gold as well, and also around that main orb in the center, them little segmented pieces, I do that in gold. I like to think of the gold as a sort of conductor for their Necron glow stuff, and so yeah, I apply that in places where I think the circuits will sort of join up and work around. And then for the staff, as you can see, I'm just painting some of the areas, these sort of little caps at the bottom and top of each of these areas. And also later on, once I have done the blade in green, I will paint that whole center area, that sort of spike looking piece, in gold as well. But I leave that at this point because of the way that I'll be applying the green, means I'll just end up having to go back over it with gold later on. Okay, so I'm now going to paint the most complicated part of the model, of almost any Necron model, and that is the black to green fade on the blade at the top of the staff and also the bottom of the staff. Now I'm not going to show it in full detail here. Instead I will post a link in the cards and down in the description to a slightly more detailed video where I show how I paint it on the Skorpekh destroyers. It is pretty much the same method, but basically I use a very thinned down black, and I sort of saturate the brush with the black, and then I will touch the tip of the brush into a non-thinned, so quite a thick moot green, so a nice bright green, and then working from where I want the green, I will move backwards and forwards and bring that brush down. And what will happen is the green will apply first, and that black will start to mix in with it and get darker to the bottom. Now this doesn't go on perfectly first time every time, it does take some backwards and forwards, which is why I'm not going to show exactly how I'm doing it here, otherwise the video is going to be super long. But generally you can see here how I'm getting that fade off, and then once I've got a rough idea of it, I will then use thinned down black as a glaze and work backwards from about halfway towards, or halfway between the two colours, and work backwards to where I want it darkest, obviously stepping it up each time and glazing those layers over to get darker, and then go back the other way with the moot green again as glazes and glaze it back. So the wet blending is more of an outline, like a map of where I want my fades, and then the glazes is just to refine it. And then finally, just on the brightest and darkest areas, I'll apply those dark colours, or those, you know, those pure colours, so black in the darkest area and pure green on the brightest area, and then just blend it down slightly. So next up I take some white scar and slightly thin it down just so it applies smoothly. I'm just applying it to all of the orbs that are going to have that green glow. So the main one is on his back and the upper two, as well as the pipe that goes from his back to his helmet type thing, whatever that is, his hood. On the bottom of the staff there's an orb there, and also the gem, the orb in the middle of his stomach at the top of the loincloth. He also has one on either side of his legs as well. For the staff itself, I'll take the white and very carefully edge highlight all of the staff, including where the conduct lines that go between the blade. So all of the blade will have a white line on it, and obviously that's going to give a nice glow once we move to the next stage. And that next stage is my favourite go-to quick and easy green glow effect using Tesseract Glow. So once that white has dried, I just apply this over all of those white areas and let it sort of pull into the recesses and keep it quite thin on the flatter areas. For the blade, I literally give this a glaze over. It will stain those white areas with a slight yellow-green tint, and it just helps blend the black and the greens in and gives a bit of a smoother transition with a slight glow to those green areas. Okay, so now to give his armour that beetle colour shift sheen, I'm using the Psychotic Illusions colour shift metal from Green Stuff World, and just applying 2 or 3 thin coats of this all over that INCUBI darkness, and this will give a nice colour shift that goes from a sort of greenish look to a reddish purple, depending on how you angle it within the light. And then finally, to give that gold some shading and some highlight and stuff, I'm just applying an all over wash of REIKLAND FLESHSHADE. Now what I'm aiming to do here is get this to sit in the overlaps on his tassels, the gold tassels on his cloak. So just give it a nice thick wash, and then I'll touch the brush to each of the wings on those little gold pieces. So each one, if you imagine it to be a set of wings, I'll touch the brush just to the left and right side, and that will deposit a small amount of the shade in those areas. And because of the way that the shade wants to pool in the center, it leaves the outside edges with that gold and gives an already natural highlight. So you can see it on the top view there, where it sort of pulls in the middle and leaves that outer ring of gold. And I'll let that fully dry. I'll watch it for the first few minutes and make sure that nothing pools too much. Obviously this, with gravity, this is going to want to pull down to the bottom and collect at the bottom. So when it does that, I just wick it off with the brush and then wipe it back into the pot, and yeah, just let it dry after that. You don't want to touch it too much, because if it starts to dry and you wick away, you'll get some ringing, like a coffee stain on a table. You don't want that. You want to grab it as soon as it starts to collect down at the bottom before it starts to dry. You just want to wick some of that away. I'll then let this dry for about 20 minutes and then paint the base, and the model is done. And there he is, one completed Skorpekh Technomancer is what I have decided to call him. So obviously he's just a Technomancer, but with Skorpekh legs. So yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. If you have, hit that thumbs up button, and if you have not yet subscribed, there is a subscribe button next to it. If you have recently subscribed, then a huge warm welcome to the inner circle. Thank you ever so much for your support. I've got links in the corner there for other videos this week. Obviously, because I missed last week, I'm doing a double week. And so we've got the magazine review for the shipping container as well for issue 19. So do check that out as well. But that's all from me for now, guys. So until next week, take it easy and keep painting those minis.